Brittany, and you're listening to Tribe Travelers, where we bring you the experiences of families of color living abroad.
Today we have with us Tim Swain. Tim, his wife Tia, and their son Tohaji are an African-American family that recently relocated to Ghana from the U.S. to further develop their nonprofit organization, Enidaso, an organization that empowers leaders through cultural trips to Ghana. They've been living in Ghana since 2019 and document their experiences via their YouTube channel to help people with practical information who want to relocate as well. Their son has traveled to more places in his first 2 years of his life than in their first 18. Isn't that awesome? Thank you for joining us, Tim.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to get into the conversation today, so I appreciate it.
All right. Well, go ahead and tell us about yourself. Tell us about what made you want to move abroad, specifically to Ghana, and how was that transition for your family?
Yeah, sure. So just a little bit of background about myself. I'm born and raised in the United States, specifically Texas, but even more specifically, the south side of Houston, Texas. So, grew up in Houston and always had this piece of my identity that wanted to know more about what it meant to be Black. And that has always been a part of who I am. And so when I relocated to Indiana, after college and stuff like that, got married, I noticed that part of me never, ever went away. Even after, getting into a relationship with God and stuff like that, I still had a whole lot of questions centered around my Black identity, my ethnic identity. And kind of everything came to a culminating point around 2014 when I was in Ferguson, Missouri. And this is right around the Mike Brown shooting, an unarmed Black man killed by police. And what happened was I was marching with the NAACP organization, the civil rights organization. And I remember at that time, I was seeing the faces of the people on the roadside. I was experiencing the yells and all this other kind of stuff. People leaving fried chicken, watermelon on the side of the road. Somebody even threw a brick or something like that and bust out one of the windows of our van. And I say all of this because between 2007 and this time, 2014, I was traveling back and forth to Ghana. And around this time in 2014, I think it was in the early fall. So I experienced this real abrasive reality that I am a Black man living in America. And several months later, I went to Ghana to do a setup trip for an organization that I have that takes people back and forth to Ghana. And it was just these two realities. On one hand, I'm reminded every day of my otherness. Then when I get to Ghana, I am just a human being. And so that was kind of like the catalyst for my transformation. Fast forward to 2019, I took several years of planning, a lot of conversations, but then my family and I relocated to Ghana permanently, and that's where we've been ever since.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, just that in and of itself, and thinking about that, I can, watching it on television or seeing it in the news and media, certainly causes you to have these conversations, causes you to, have these thoughts. But being there, I'm sure, only surpasses what I could even, touch on about being in a protest or, just witnessing it firsthand. So, I can certainly, it's an amazing story to me. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So what was the transition like when you guys first you said you had been traveling there for many years, right?
Yeah. I was, what I tell people is it is extremely different, right? When you're visiting, let's say if you're a Westerner or somebody from the US and you're visiting a place like Ghana, which they say is a developing nation, right? Because prior to 2019, we were visitors. We didn't have to work. When we went there, we didn't have to be at a place at a certain time. We didn't have those restraints of okay, where do I find something to eat or how do I get around and blah, 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 blah. So when we got there in 2019, my wife and I really had two different experiences. My wife's experience transitioning was a little bit more rough because of the emotional piece. She had we lived in Indianapolis, Indiana for 7 years prior to moving to Ghana. and she developed relationships. She knew people. She had girls groups she was with, blah, 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 blah. So she had a whole community. I mean, I did as well. But then we moved to Ghana. All of that is cut off. Just even trying to communicate with people in the way we're talking right now, right? We are the ones all of a sudden who have the accent. We're the ones that cannot be understood. We're the ones who are saying words that don't, mean the same thing in the British English that Ghanaians speak versus the American, and then us, the urban American Black dialect that we speak. And so I think the biggest parts of the transition that were the most challenging was the development of authentic relationships, just trying to figure out how to navigate life without being cheated every day. And then the last thing was really just trying to find a routine. And keep in mind, we moved to Ghana right before COVID happened. And so that ultimately impacted things as well. But I would say those were the major parts of our transition. That was the roughest, but on the flip side, the best part, I think, at least for me, was as I was watching everything go down in the States, right around 2019, 2020, George Floyd. And unfortunately, so many names I can't even remember. It was like, wow, I don't have to worry about that because I'm in Ghana. Versus being in the States where it's just like, it was very, very, very tense. It still is tense in terms of the racial tension. But anyway.
So then you would say, it's almost a sense of relief in some aspects of, being in Ghana versus being in the United States.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I remember one day I was jogging around in Ghana, and I started thinking about Ahmaud Arbery, who was jogging, and then that ended up with his life being taken because some people decided that you don't belong here and we want to instigate something so that we can, take your life. And I was just thinking, like, the type of freedom that I have in Ghana as a human being, which ought to be basic to every person. But when I started thinking about those challenges that we were having, and we can get into some of that later in terms of just like the structural issues, the open sewers, blah, 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 blah. It was like, you know what? I probably never get stopped because I'm running in the wrong neighborhood, and that will end with my life being taken. So it's kind of like, you know what? It's all good. It's all good.
And I'm glad you shared that with us because I did watch your videos about things you dislike about Ghana and things you love about Ghana. And just FYI, most of the things you dislike about Ghana are the same things we dislike about Egypt. Everywhere there's pros and cons. So you just have to evaluate for yourself what's worth dealing with, what's not worth dealing with. What do you as an individual want to put up with?
Right. I think that that's true. And also in the fact that what you said was, as you said, it's different when you're a tourist and then when you become a resident, because I see a lot of times, I just recently saw, someone posting about, I went to Egypt and, I'm this and I'm that, and, had, so many wonderful things to say. But again, and glamorizing it. Well, from that aspect, I guess it is glamour. But then we have to come to the reality that all changes once you make this decision to permanently relocate. Things are not going to be the same. And so by you saying that, it brings forth just more information about how it's different being a tourist, and you don't have to find out where to go and get something to eat. You don't have to find out how to get to work, the best route, or, things of that nature. You're just a tourist. But it does change significantly when you do have to, what grocery store should I go to? How am I going to get there? How can I plan my time accordingly so that I meet this or I meet that? So those things do certainly come into play once that transition is made.
And I do think it's even more profound that, most people will make one trip to a country before moving, but you were back and forth several times over several years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's correct. The first time I went to Ghana was in 2007. I was a college student and I was there for 7 weeks. and it literally transformed my life. I mean, I came back so black in terms of my mind state. I was just like, I'm blackity black and I'm black, y'all. Like I came back real black. And that was really transformative for me. And I tell this story because I want to help people understand the mind state that I was in. Prior to going to Ghana in 2007, I was like, success for me means I get a white woman, and it's no offense to anyone who's in an interracial dating relationship or anything like that. But for me, it wasn't about valuing the person regardless of what they look like. It was like, this woman is representative of a certain social construct, right? That adds value to my life, and didn't necessarily see the value as much in Black women. And like, just my mind state was that, right? But when I went to Ghana and I came back, everything shifted. I'll say that my dating preferences, what I thought was beautiful. So it really just challenged a lot of the social constructs that I had and helped me reimagine what my life would be. And then between 2007 2019, when we moved, I think I traveled like 13 times just for like various reasons, some with the organization and stuff like that. But it was still totally different, as you guys know, when we actually moved there permanently.
All right. So let's go ahead and get on the nuts and bolts of your life in Ghana. I guess let's talk about the housing. Can people expect for housing for a family?
Okay. Yeah. So let's say if someone's moving to Ghana, everything I preference with, it depends on if a person knows someone here and where they're coming from. So let's just say a person is coming from a place like the US or London or something like that, where it's more developed, more systems, more structures. The first thing I often tell people is really try to think about what kind of lifestyle you want to have. For example, in Ghana, you have homes and you have neighborhoods that are oftentimes built by like carpenters and masons. And so the home may be functional, right? Like there's a toilet, there's a sink, like it's functional, but on the most basic level. So if you're used to like cabinets being like at a certain height, your shelves being the same height as your kitchen sink and your stove, like these little things, or like the door closing all of the way, or like, simple things like this, you'll move to a place in a neighborhood that may be great community and all that, but it may have bumpy roads. It may be crazy like that, versus if you move into a development where it's controlled by whoever the development, agency is, where you may have paved roads, covered gutters. You may have houses that are built by actual architects, and you may find those structures similar to what you're used to, in a place like the US. And so I would say the major difference is like whether you live in a development or just like a general neighborhood. And then also knowing that in Ghana, I don't know why it's like this, I'm still trying to figure it out, but in Ghana, what usually happens with rent is, if you're renting, which I highly recommend first, you usually pay your rent 12 to 24 months in advance.
That's something that I heard and I wanted to confirm, and that's big.
Yeah. It's really a lot of money, because let's imagine you move into a place where it's a nice neighborhood where, this is a lot of money, but let's just say in some of the nicer parts of Ghana, the rent goes for like $700 a month, right? Imagine paying 700 times 24 up front. That's a lot of money. And what happens is the bigger difference would be, once you pay that money, a lot of times your landlord is like, don't call me unless something blows up or something is on fire. So it's kind of like you're on your own, and a lot of people are not used to that.
As far as maintenance, are you generally responsible for maintenance, or can you depend on the landlords? See if the toilet breaks, what do you do?
Yeah. It depends on where you stay. Like if you stay like in a development area versus just like a regular neighborhood where somebody's renting. But I would say the general rule of thumb is, if you're renting a house, it's really like owning a home, except you don't own the home, because everything is on you except for like paying property taxes and stuff like that. But toilet breaks down, there's a hole in the wall, whatever, that's all on you.
So you said about $700 for like a nice apartment in a nice neighborhood.
That's that's on the high end. Yeah, that's on the high end.
So now my question is then, I know you said you don't know why it's like that, but I'm just trying to figure out, is all of this rent up front supposed to pose as like a security deposit, or do they also ask for that as well? You know, in the States, first, last, you know, security, 1 month's rent in advance, or even here in Egypt, it's 2 security deposits, but you never get back. So I don't know why they call it a security deposit. You just might as well just say you're going to pay 2 months advance rent and you never get that back. But in addition to paying the 24 months in advance, are they also requiring that as well?
It depends on where you go. I mean, in my situation, I just had to pay 24 months in advance, but I've known people to pay a security deposit that they don't get back. And it really depends on a couple of things, like who the landlord is and your negotiation skills. If you know how to negotiate well, and you know kind of like the value for certain things, then, you know, you can really work with people. But if you don't, and especially I tell people this, if you are what's called, you know, like a foreigner, or what they'll call you is Obruni, or like a white person, then, you know, it's like all bets are off, because the assumption is you have tons of money and it's really difficult to negotiate if you don't have that skill. And then if you have like a Western identity that's attached to it, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You got to prove you're not a walking ATM.
Right. Exactly.
It's
just not enough. Because I want to be like, but I come from the ghetto. I don't have no money.
They don't know. They just think it's America, land of milk and honey, streets are paved with gold.
With gold.
Yeah, I'm telling you, goodness, my goodness. And so, did your place come furnished? Is it equivalent to the more money you pay, then it's furnished, or is it still empty? And when we say furnished, some people, you know, just for clarity reasons, I'm not just talking about furniture. When we say furnished here in Egypt, that means all of your appliances. That means building a closet if you want a closet space. That does not just mean furniture. That means putting in a kitchen sink. I mean, a lot of times, unfurnished here is just the walls that were put up.
Yeah, you know what? That's a really great question. And for me, my place was unfurnished, means that when we moved in, well, in Ghana, it's like you don't have closets. So you have like what they call wardrobes, which is basically like a big closet that's kind of like built into the wall. So besides that, that's all we had. No curtains, no curtain rods. We had a sink, you know, but no appliances, no furniture.
No refrigerator, stove.
Nothing.
Water heater.
Oh, no. We ain't had no water heater. So we were sleeping on basically a mattress on the floor for like, I'd say about a couple of weeks, because we just didn't know where to buy like a bed frame. We didn't know if this is a nice one or this place has the better deal.
Y'all gotta go to the YouTube channel and hear the story about the bed frame. It's hilarious.
I'm still dealing with that. That's the crazy thing. I still ain't got my bed fixed, man.
Wow. And it's just so funny because when we came here, when we first moved here, my husband and I and our daughter, same thing. Like, where do you go to get stuff? I mean, they'd have a million stores with mattresses, but not one of them stores had bed frames in it. We was like, well, what? I don't understand. But this can't be how it's like, because our first place was actually furnished completely. So obviously there's bed frames somewhere, because we weren't. But once we moved and it was unfurnished, it was like unbelievable trying to figure out where to get all this stuff.
That's part of the transition, finding out where to get stuff. It's not as easy as it is in the States.
No, because it's not advertised. It's not yellow pages. It just say, what store can I go to? None of that.
Yeah, what you're saying is absolutely correct. And the thing is, Ghana is really mostly about relationships, right? And so you could tell someone that you need anything and somebody knows somebody that can do it for you, which sounds great, right? But you may have a higher quality, like I said, we're like remembering the house when it's just functional enough to live, but it's not like, may not be aesthetically pleasing. It may be like really, really, really hot in one room because nobody thought that the air doesn't flow this way or whatever. And so you may say, hey, I need a bed or I need a dresser. Oh, I have an uncle that can do it for you or blah, 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 blah. But the person may not be professional. The person may have a shop where the floor is not level. So by the time they give it to you, one side is longer than the other. And,
We know.
Yes.
So I mean, y'all probably know it's just like, come on, man, come on now.
And these are little things, but little things add up to big things
Very quickly.
Mm-hmm. So just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Let's go on. What about transportation? Do you guys rent a car? Do you take Uber?
We mostly use Uber. And there's another driving service here called Bolt, which is basically like Uber, except a local version. And so those are the two primary ways we get around. I used to take the local transportation, which is called a trotro here in Ghana. And like, if I really need to go like a short distance, that's like a direct stop, I may take a trotro. But when you look at the pros and cons of just like how much, like an Uber trip may be 30 minutes. In a trotro, it'll be like an hour and a half.
Right. Oh, okay. Right. Yeah. So
just because, of all the stops and then it may break down. And so, but those are the primary ways we get around. But we will probably, I told someone this, that more than likely, once we get a couple more plans solidified, and if things look a little better in the States in terms of COVID, the plan would be actually to go back to the US and buy a bunch of stuff and come back to Ghana, which include a car and everything else.
Okay. So having the car shipped is a thought of getting a car back over to Ghana. Rather than buying a car in Ghana, you're going to buy a car in the States and have it shipped.
Yeah, that's what I would do. And that's just me. I know I've known several people who bought cars in Ghana, but I mean, imagine you guys have heard the story about the bed, right? So imagine now this is a car that you've invested a lot of money in. And unless and for me, in my idea, unless I'm buying a car directly from one of the dealerships here, like the manufacturers like Toyota or something like that, which I'm not going to do because it'd be too much money.
Right.
I wouldn't chance buying a car in Ghana because here's the crazy thing. Most of the cars are imported from auctions and stuff like that from the US.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
So and then you're going to pay the of course, because they pay taxes and import fees on it, so they're just gonna pass it along to you. And then the thing is, you don't really know if what has happened to this car and if something breaks down is too much. So for me, I would rather go to the US, go to a place I know that sells quality cars, have my mechanic look at it, vet it and all that, and pay the extra money to have it shipped. But at least I have a peace of mind knowing this is a quality car.
Well, that's a good point to think about, for sure. We didn't consider that, especially the auctions. That's interesting. Your utilities, just to get a roundabout ballpark, I'm assuming you're paying them separately from your housing?
Yeah, that's correct. So the main utilities that we have in Ghana is going to be your water. Does internet count as a utility? I don't know, but like water.
Well, yeah, here it does for sure, since it's never unlimited. So
I would say the major things that a person will have to think about is water. We have like propane gas, for cooking here in Ghana. But we buy like tanks for that. It's not like built into the home.
Okay.
And electricity, I think internet. And phone, and like your phone, what's called phone credit. So basically like minutes on your phone.
Right.
So to give you a ballpark figure, we have air conditioning in our home. So, I mean, we don't have a television, but we have air conditioning, and that takes a lot of energy.
Yeah.
We also have we also have a washing machine in our home. And so on average, we pay, actually it's not too much, comparatively speaking. Our electricity every month is probably around $80 to $85.
Yeah. Okay. That's manageable.
That's for electricity. Our water, the crazy thing is we haven't gotten a water bill in like a year just because of just some lack of structures in Ghana. But when we do pay our water bill, it's no more than like every month around $10.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Internet would be every month. And keep in mind, my wife works from home. I work from home. So I'd rather buy a plan where it's not running out every now and again. So I just buy the plan that's right under the unlimited. And that probably cost me a month. That's around, if I do the math, probably about $40 to $45 a month.
Okay.
And then when it comes to propane gas, I mean, we don't really cook like Ghanaian food, which, you know, it's like soul food cooking. So we don't use it as much. But I would say a month, we probably change our propane tanks maybe like once every 2-3 months.
That lasts a long time, huh?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I mean, because we cook, you know, we're not cooking like letting it stew overnight kind of soul food. It's basic stuff. So it'll probably last us about every 2 months. And for the big propane tank, to fill it will cost about 160 CDs. So that's like, I think like $20 or something like that.
So I think, it might be a little bit cheaper than not too much cheaper than what we're paying here, but definitely right around the same sort of ballpark.
So my next question is healthcare. What's the healthcare like there?
Well, that's a really great question. When we came, we used to travel with international like health insurance. But before we got to getting that resolved, I didn't know about the healthcare. So this is essentially what we did. The amount of money that we would have paid in premiums, we just saved that money and put it to the side every month. And we don't have like a health plan in Ghana because I haven't found one that is like the best one. And unfortunately, the last time I went to like the hospital to just go get a checkup, you know, they told me that the best insurance plans are the foreign ones, like Blue Cross, Blue Shield and stuff like that. So, but those are ridiculously a lot of money. I'm talking about like $700 a month that I'm not paying.
Right.
And so we just put money to the side every month and we paid cash, honestly, for things. And to give you some kind of perspective, like I went in for a checkup, just a general checkup, just to make sure everything is good, got blood work and stuff done. And that cost me about 400 CDs, which is probably about a little bit under $80.
Okay.
That's good.
That sounds about what we were thinking anyway, that it would probably cost.
Well, I guess I wanted to ask you on the subject of health, what's the COVID situation like there? Has it affected your guys' life much or not really?
Really, it was more so during the initial part of COVID when the whole world was experiencing these lockdowns. And because the whole continent in general, with the exception of like maybe a couple places, South Africa, some other places, were not really hit that hard, we didn't see it to the degree that you saw it in other places like the US. But right now, I think our active cases like 8,000 or something like that. Our total cases are around like 70,000. But it really hasn't. It hasn't impacted, you guys are in Africa. So it's kind of like you have the rule, but then you have what everybody does.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
So the rule is you got to be wearing your face mask. You got to do this. You got to do that. But it's like you got to be social distancing. But that stuff don't work in Ghana. It don't work in a lot of places in Africa because that's not the context. So there's a lot of people wearing face masks. They have a quote unquote ban on certain things like going to the public beaches and stuff. But I mean, if you go to the beach right now, you'll see people there.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And no one is really enforcing it. Yeah.
No. Yeah, exactly.
Now, did you have to have any vaccination requirements when you entered the country?
Yeah, we did. The main thing was yellow fever, and there's some other stuff, but I forgot. I mean, because I have been traveling for so long, but the main thing that they ask you for at the airport is yellow fever. And then they don't ask you for this, but it's advisable to have some kind of malaria medication with you. And my wife and my son, I just honestly forgot to take it. But my wife and my son took malaria medication for like the first month when they got here.
Okay.
Yeah.
As far as your visa or residency, what's that situation like?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we came here on just, regular multiple entry visas, which allows us to be in the country for, I think, like 45 days for unlimited trips. And so we went to the immigration office and then we got residency permits. And so we're residents of Ghana that enable us to, do the normal stuff like open a bank account and blah, 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 blah. Mm. And that usually lasts for like a year. And so we got ours last year. And so our residency permits will be ending probably in about 4 or 5 months. And so we'll have to go and get those renewed so we can, still be legal in the country. Eventually, I want to get a citizenship. That's how eventually I want to move towards,
right. Okay.
Getting citizenship.
Now, as far as the residency permit, is it difficult to get? Are there stringent requirements?
Because when I first moved here, I was in school. My residency permit was a student permit, and that covered my whole family. And when I was in school, my administration at school, they kind of handled most of it, even though we went down to the office. They did most of the process. Mm-hmm. Now, I'll find out very soon what it's going to be like to get our new residency permit now that I'm no longer a student.
Right. Okay.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Yeah, because what we found here in Egypt is that if you're not employed at a company here, it gets difficult after some time.
Yeah. It gets almost impossible.
Really?
Yeah. So I was just curious as to there, if you're not working with a company there, or if you're not a student, how they treat you.
I guess I'll find out soon.
I'm curious.
I'm curious too, because again, we have this year of the return. So you would think this stuff would be easier, right? That's what we're promoting. So if that's the case, it should be open arms.
You would think that, but it's just like, I just realized living in Ghana, one of the major differences is the structures, right? Like, there's a lack of structure to even monitor things. And I've come to the painstaking admission that I don't like to use the term corruption, but because corruption is often associated with like evil, malicious intent. I think that because the country is so developing and the average person is just trying to survive, then the way of life oftentimes is like you just take money where you can get it. So when it comes to things like for example, even getting my residency permit, the guy was like, oh, it takes this much. It takes 2 weeks or this. But give me your phone number so I can contact you when it's ready. Okay, I know what that means. That means that I'll expedite the process. And when I meet you, you need to slide me a little something extra. So for me, it's like, what am I going to do? Am I going to say, nah, man, I want to go the 2-week route and I ain't got no permit?
Right.
Or am I going to say, you know what? Hey, here's a little extra change. Make sure my stuff get approved.
Just like those 2 weeks can turn into a few days. Those 2 weeks can turn into 4 weeks.
Yes.
It can, exactly.
Very easily. But you know what? That's an interesting way to look at it. And honestly, when you spin it that way, I don't really want to use the word spin it that way, but when you think about it in that way, I mean, corruption, we can say, happens at the very, very top. But most of the people, like you said, who are in these positions, or not the positions, but are in the offices or whatever, they aren't at the very top. And they're not making the very top money, and maybe not even making anything at all. And so I am just trying to make a little extra money so that I can, for goodness sakes, make sure I have groceries, make sure I have this, make sure I have that. So that's a very interesting way to spin it. And something I might think about the next time I go to the immigration office. Well, you know what? I'm going to hold my peace and just, because it is an interesting way to think about it, because definitely there is the super rich, and then there are the rest, and then there's the super poor. And so there's not an even balance in that at all.
You know what? When you brought that up, it's something that I think that a lot of people, especially folks listening, maybe from different parts of the States, don't recognize. Mm-hmm. Typically, let's say if you are in the States, the US, if you live in a middle-class neighborhood, you live in a middle-class neighborhood, right? If there is such a thing as middle class. But you're not going to see typically a home that's worth, let's say in Indiana, a $500,000 home, and then literally right next door, somebody that doesn't have water. Yeah. That doesn't happen like that.
Right.
But in Ghana, you will see a $500,000 home. And so, like, for example, my house is nowhere near a $500,000 home, but I live in what is a middle class neighborhood. Mm-hmm. Right next door to me, right? People don't have water at times. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So when you're living in that very real reality, and they see this person as a foreigner who they imagine has unlimited money, and you're going to, let's say, mow their grass, whatever, right? For just use this as an example. And the average Ghanaian will pay you like maybe 20 CDs to mow the grass, but this rich American, I may charge him 80.
Yeah, yeah.
And then that also goes to the point that, for us in America, fair is fair. If I charge you 20, I should charge him 20. But they don't see it that way. Mm-hmm. They see that it's fair that if you have more, then you should pay more. Mm-hmm. If it's not going to hurt you, then it's going to help me. Then you should. That's your duty, kind of, so to speak. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's true. And I'm still trying to do some research on this, but I have an assumption based off of colonization and how it happened in West Africa, particularly in Ghana, which is oftentimes Western states are seen in like a paternalistic relationship to Africa. So you have like if you're coming from the West, the assumption is like you take care of us, because that's what the colonizers did. They put you in a position to where you had to depend on us. Yep. So I've had situations where people would say, "Hey, just do what's right." Because I got a baby coming, and you should give me $10,000, which is like 60,000 CDs, which is like what a very, very, very well-trained doctor would make, like a top of the tier doctor would make, right? Mm-hmm. But that person is like, the assumption is you are coming from the West. Mm-hmm. You're supposed to take care of me. Mm-hmm. You have money. You are in this role as like and some Ghanaians don't see it that way. But when you really look at even certain things, like it's like, oh, daddy, where's my money? Mm-hmm. Right? Like you become like a daddy, if you're like of a certain social status.
Right.
So people are just kind of like, you should be taking care of me because I think you have a lot of money. And that's just what you're supposed to do. You're coming from America.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right. Are you familiar with the book, The ISIS Papers? By Frances Cress Welsing?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. She speaks a lot to that, to that mentality as a result of colonization and the white supremacy system. So yeah, I agree.
I think that's a good laying into how you assimilate into the culture too, and your community, how you can, set yourself up, if you have this sort of thought about you, how then do you assimilate into the culture of the community without being always thought of as, quote unquote, the daddy, the parent? I'm trying to invest myself personally into this culture. You know what I mean? So I don't want to be seen as the overseer, because the overseer never becomes part of the community. He's always going to be the overseer.
Yeah. The short answer is I don't know. I'm still trying to figure it out. Mm-hmm. It's less difficult than it was when we first got here. And we just wanted to like be very introverted and not talk to no one, because it was like the conversation always ended with somebody asking for money.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And we didn't know if somebody was genuinely trying to help or was just like, yo, I see you as a meal, so let me try to ask for some money. And so I think what I've realized is, I hate to say this, but it's really difficult to integrate into a community when you're coming as a person like myself from the West. You're coming into a middle class scenario. You're coming with global experience, right? You've seen the land that most people are trying to get to, right? Most people view as heaven. And you've seen it. You're like, whatever, right? And so when you come into Ghana, you are integrating into a culture where most people have never seen that. I tell people it's just like if a person grew up in a very, let's just say even you're Black, right? But you grew up in a very wealthy part of, let's say, New York. And you place that person like in the hoodest of the hoods. And this person has had, let's say this person's been around the world. They've traveled, they've done all this, and they just get smack dab in the hood. And they're trying to relate to people who have limited resources, limited exposure. The conversation is going to be difficult because you may say, yo, man, let's go out and have a good time at this restaurant where it only costs $100 for us to eat and watch a movie. And that person like, I make $100 a week. I'm not finna
spend that on that. Yeah, exactly.
And that's how it is in Ghana. So it's like you may meet somebody and your casual cultural thing to do is you meet somebody, yo, let's go out to eat. Let's go have a whatever. But it's like, oh, if we go out and it's two of us, it may cost 100 CDs. You make 1,000 CDs a month. You're not finna spend it on one day.
No.
So what we had to do is really just find people who, honestly, I hate to say it, but just have a similar socioeconomic status. And also people who are expats who are living in Ghana because they understand the culture. They've been exposed to the outside. And so they just, the conversation is a little bit different. I just put it like that.
Right.
Now, what about the expat community there? Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So you have a lot of different people that are here in Ghana. I mean, you have a lot of Chinese, Lebanese. You have African Americans that are here. You have an African American Association that's here. It's called the African American Association of Ghana.
Okay.
And this is a group of individuals that, get together, plan events and stuff like that. I haven't seen as much just because of COVID.
Right.
But the community does exist. And I'm really just now connecting with a lot of people because for the last year, I was in school and working. And so most of the time it was like from sunup to sundown.
Sure.
We wouldn't meet nobody. It was just all work and no play. So, but there is a community here of expats from the States and from other places, from London. And they normally stay in like areas like Accra, which is like the main city for folks listening. Yeah.
And so how does that play then for your son?
Yeah, that's a real, it was a lot more challenging in the beginning because he just didn't have people to play with, the people that live across the street from us, they speak Tree, or like my area is a kind of like a diverse area in terms of ethnic. So we have people that are Shanti, people that speak Gas, people that speak Trees, people that speak Ewe. And so long story short is like my son, he would play with the kids, but it's always limited, right? Because like, hey, you can come in our house, you can come in our house, you can play on our stuff.
Right.
But it's like, he can't really go to your house because it's not that same level of just like mutual kind of, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And so
how old is he?
He's 5. He'll be 5 this year. But the good news is at his school, it's a small school. It's a Montessori school.
Okay.
Wonderful.
And so he's able to meet young kids. And then now, because we've been here for a while, I guess our neighbors trust us. So some of our neighbors like have birthday parties and stuff like that. So he'll go over there for that. But again, it goes back to socioeconomic status, right? So
right.
So yeah.
So are you guys happy with the Montessori school? At the school, is it mostly Ghanaian children, mostly expat children? What are your plans as far as further education?
Yeah, my wife is really happy with the school, which is the most important thing. It's a small school. It's 100% Ghanaians with the exception of my son.
Oh, wow. Okay. Very nice.
Because the area that we live in is like mostly, I say like 99% Ghanaians.
Okay.
And it's a very new school. And what typically happens is when you have people that are, let's say, middle-class Ghanaians, they will go for international schools to put their kids in. Yes. I didn't necessarily want to put my son in international school because oftentimes international schools are great in terms of exposure. But when it comes to like just African-centered curriculum, you don't find so much of that. And then it's just like, it's just a little different. I'll just say that. It's a little different. I'll just say that.
So to what age does the Montessori school go to?
That's a good question. I don't even know.
Okay. No, I'm just thinking.
I don't even.
I think it's just early years. So
yeah. So like after the early years,
it's
do you
gonna
guys
switch
plan
something
on
else?
homeschooling? You say,
I don't know what we're gonna do, honestly.
Yeah.
All right. As far as leisure activities or things for your son to do outside of school, what is that like there in Accra?
Yeah, so I'm just now finding out a lot of stuff myself, but like we'll do things like there's like a mountain hike. We'll do that. There's a zoo I've yet to go to. There's also like a couple of kid parks that I've taken him to. And then my wife has actually met some more people who have kids. And so they will go out for like kid play dates and just go run around and, do stuff like that. So you have some of those things around that you can do with the young ones.
Well, that's good because otherwise he's not going to have those relationships to help. Children need those play dates and those building opportunities. And I would assume that these are also beneficial in helping a child settle in because without them, there's no sense of self. And even at that young age, it's like, why are we here?
That's what my son was doing. Like my son would first mention, he would say, I miss Indiana. And at first I was like, oh boy, you don't know what you're talking about. But then he would keep saying it. I want to go back to Indiana. I want to get on a plane and go back to Indiana. And, when I really started finally listening to him, okay, I'm putting myself in his shoes, right? Like he was in daycare from the time he was like, I think like 3 months up until we left.
Okay.
And then, like I said, we had community. So it was no thing for Tahaji to be at one of our church members' house.
Right.
And so he got to Ghana. COVID happened. He's not in school. He's with his parents all day. He has no friends. He could play outside, but there's no young kids around his age. So he was just like, I'm not about this Ghana life right now. I'm ready to go back I want to go back to Indiana.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And that's why we wanted to ask about the community because, we've been here 9 years and community is key to a healthy experience.
Absolutely.
So like you said, your wife meeting up with other moms and children and having to play dates. And that's beneficial for her as well. We need that.
For sure. How do you feel about, speaking of just getting out and about and that sort of thing, how do you feel about the scene, the eating scene, going to other things as adults? I hear that your wife has met other moms and everything, and that's great. So as adults, how are you all navigating it?
I think we're really finding our groove now. COVID is changing a little bit in terms of like the restrictions have eased up. I'm no longer in school. So we have a little bit more time freedom to do things, but there's stuff around to do. There's restaurants. There's I'm finding out stuff every day. As you guys said, it's not like you can just go do a Google search, top 5 things to do.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Like you gotta know somebody to tell you, but then a person that tell you may have a different idea about what's fun versus you. And you get to the place like this is what y'all doing? Oh no, I'm good.
Yeah, that's true.
So we're learning. The good news is I think one of the things we just did recently is we took a family vacation. We just went right down to the beach, got a hotel by the beach, and we just literally relaxed. We ate ice cream. We stayed around the hotel and just was able to just kind of get away. And I say that this is one of the things I tell people is if you have money in Ghana, and when I say money, I'm talking about listen, if you was making your take home salary was like 25 to 30,000 US dollars and you was getting that every year and the equivalent in Ghana, you could really live. And and especially if you got no kids and nothing like that, you're a single person. Oh my goodness. You could live a really, really nice life because on average, middle class would be around $800 a month. And that's like renting a 3-bedroom house in a nice neighborhood, eating out, taking Ubers everywhere you go every day, having house help. All of that is included in $800. So imagine if you're bringing home like $2,000 a month, you could live really well. And it's a lot of stuff to do, depending on what your money, will give you access to.
Right. And that is how you get this expat lifestyle for sure, because it's similar here. You have these expats that come in, they teach, and then they're getting paid in either dollars or British sterling. And we're doing everything. We're doing everything that we possibly can. So it is a different sort of lifestyle depending on what your income is. And that is an important thing to think about. Some people, say, well, I'm just going to save up this amount and then figure out when I go. But you have to make sure you still have something coming in order, depending on, like you said, on the type of lifestyle that you are actually trying to live.
Yeah, because your money will get eaten up so quick, especially if you don't know. Yep. If you don't know anything, you'll waste so much money just on you. I can't even begin to describe it unless you've experienced it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
All right.
Okay, so hey, is Africa?
Yeah, what? It is a doozy. I was thinking, well, maybe his power went off. We can certainly attest to that. Just all of a sudden, there's no power, which always gets me because it's like it's so much sun here. Oh. There's no reason why you go out of power. As a matter of fact, one of my sisters, she teaches 8th grade science, and we had a look at how Denmark is using wave technology to produce sustainable electricity. And it's just like Africa is surrounded by oceans. Waves are continuously coming in. There is so much energy that can be harnessed from there. But of course, it's just like Africa is only thought of as a place to rip off and to steal and to take, and nothing goes back into it.
Yeah. I heard this story about Akon when he was doing his project, Lighting Up Africa. And he was like, he went to his hometown, Senegal, and was like, yo, why did the lights go off? Okay, I'm going to build an energy plant. Long story short, the president was like, yo, it's going to cost this much money. Thought Akon was playing. He came back with that much money. And he was like, hey, listen, if you're trying to get into the oil industry, I want you to know that this is what causes wars.
Right.
So,
right.
And that's what led him to do the solar. And so, as you talked about, I think a lot of it is just political. But then some stuff, I'm just like, come on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Listen, come on now. Yeah. We can have some. We can have some solar power here.
Right.
Because it may not be from the top down, but on an individual level, houses can get solar.
Absolutely.
Solar panels. We can.
Absolutely.
On the grassroots level, it's possible.
It is possible because it doesn't make any sense. It's sunny most of the time, right. So not only can you harness that energy, but then you can also charge. Recharging your batteries, power batteries or whatever, so that if there is for some reason that the power goes off, then you have this backup power source. But it's just like we're not even thinking about that. We're just like, oh, well, electricity went off for 8 hours and we'll just wait it out. Yeah.
And it's expensive. I mean, it's very expensive, at least in Ghana, where if you talk about solar, let's say you wanted to power an entire house, you're talking about maybe $10,000 because the government is not really offering a lot of subsidies for people and stuff like that.
Right.
And for us, I thought, but then when I looked at the price, I thought again, because I said, oh, no, I ain't got no $10,000. Right. This ain't even my house. Right. But we did end up getting an inverter.
Oh, okay.
So now when the power goes off, we flip the inverter and it basically runs everything in the house with the exception of the air condition. But it's like, we don't need the air condition 24/7. So, but it was essential for us because it was like, it's the infrequency. It's just like, how like you don't know when the power will cut off, and you don't know if it's going to be off for 5 minutes, or in our case, sometimes we've had 48 hours. And that means what? All your food and your
it's gone. It's gone, definitely.
Because it's hot, right? And it's humid. And it's just like, no, this don't make no sense. It don't make no sense. Come on. It
doesn't. Especially because then you have places like where I'm originally from, Seattle, Washington, where, the lead gives substantial subsidies for you having a greenhouse on your roof, or having solar power, or having this, you know what I mean? So it is, again, it's that mentality of a developed nation and a non-developed nation where, yes, we will give subsidies so that you can, make your house sustainable. Whereas here, where you need to make it sustainable, because like you said, it doesn't make sense. Las Vegas is 24/7, 365 or 4, lights on, never stops. You know what I mean? So how can that possibly be? And here in Africa, it's nowhere. It's amazing. It is.
But I think that's where the business opportunities come in for people, because I've seen so many stories of people, Ghanaians and non-Ghanaians, Africans, non-Africans, who have said, you know what, I'm frustrated about this. So I know other people are frustrated about this. And that's actually how one of the companies got started here, one of like the largest solar power providers. It's a guy that is Ghanaian, but he lived abroad. And he said, you know what, it doesn't make sense why we shouldn't have, like, the sun shines like 300 and some days a year. It doesn't make sense. So he came back and started a solar power company. And, actually one of the malls here in Ghana is like 100% solar. Oh. And there's a community that's up the street from me, was developed by a Ghanaian raised in the U.S. and a Black American. And their community has about 180 houses, paved roads, all that is very nice. And it is like 98% solar.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you have people like that are doing that.
Right.
And it's unfortunate that the government is not doing more, especially when you think about how many Black folks in the diaspora have heard so many great things about Africa, especially Ghana, where it's like, yo, I want to get to Ghana.
Yeah.
And they come here, but it's like, oh, snap, is this the real Ghana? When it really could be a tremendous economic opportunity for people to just do some of these basic things that we're talking about.
Right. But then if we all start doing that, that's not what Africa's for. Africa is for servicing the rest of the world. Exactly. So, yeah, unfortunately.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and wrap this up. So what advice, other than what we've talked about, would you give to families who are thinking about migrating to Ghana?
The first thing I'll say is take a trip here. Take about, I say minimally about a month.
Yeah.
Like if you're really serious about moving, then a month is nothing in compared to, like, a month of inconvenience is nothing compared to like 2 years of inconvenience, especially you done paid $20,000 in advance.
Yeah, for sure.
So I definitely say take a trip and just really take a survey of the land and all the other kind of stuff. The second thing I would say is recognize that it is not America.
Yes.
And you are an outsider, and that's okay, right? Because nobody's going to hurt you, and nobody's going to really treat you generally unfair or discriminate against you because of you being an outsider, but you are different.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing I'll say is, especially if you're a Black person, one of the biggest things I'll say is to keep in mind that your Blackness, as you see it in the States, does not transcend to Ghana. So the unifying thing that unites us a lot of times as Black folks in the U.S. is the color of our skin.
Right.
You come to Ghana, you are more American than you are Black.
Right.
And that's a hard thing to wrap your mind around, because you realize, oh, snap, I'm actually a privileged person.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm coming to a place where I didn't realize that I had so much privilege, and I'm expecting my privilege to be the same thing. And the last thing I'll say is you really, 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 really got to get your money right.
Yes.
You got to have a stable source of income.
Right.
And like, you have to have a stable source of income, and do not plan on coming here and just starting a business and it's going to be profitable right away. Unless you're just like a business tycoon, they got all this experience, but the average person, I would recommend having some income that still pays you in dollars or some kind of other foreign currency, because that's a whole lot better than trying to rely on the CDs, because the pay structure in Ghana is really not where it's at.
Yeah.
In CDs.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. Thank you. And last thing is, where can we find you? How can people follow you?
All my social media, including my YouTube, is simply Mr. Tim Swain. That's MR and then TIM. SWAIN. I'll say the number one thing, if you want to learn more about Ghana through my eyes, will be the YouTube channel.
Okay.
That we have more videos up there. But yeah, and then any questions people have, at this point, I know that it can be challenging. So I encourage people to reach out and, whatever questions we can answer, we'll do our best to.
Okay. Well, I'm sure that, just talking to you has opened up my eyes even more so. And, I'm currently on the continent. So it was a pleasure talking to you, and just hearing about everything really has been very beneficial.
Yeah, well, thank you guys so much as well for what you're doing, for enlightening people about the experiences, and really helping people, just become more connected to the continent. Hey, I may be in Egypt sometime soon. I don't know.
Welcome.
As a tourist, I want to see the pyramids too. So, I appreciate it. Thank y'all so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for listening to Tribe Travelers. If you like what you heard, join the Facebook group and interact with other families of color living abroad. You can find links to our guest platforms as well as our platforms in the show notes. If you'd like to be a part of the show, email us at tribetravelerspodcast@gmail.com.